So for the jelly you need 2 pig's trotters from your local good butcher, an onion, 2 sticks of celery, a carrot, some parsley stalks and some herbs, a bay leaf, a couple of cloves and some thyme, and then you can add salt to taste. So the first step is to take the trotters, put them in a saucepan and cover them with cold water, bring it to the boil, then rinse them off, and I'll show you how to chop them up. So these are the trotters, now boiled up, scrubbed down, cooled. It just cleans them off a bit. So I slice them in half with a cleaver. There you go. And I give them a good whack, exposing the cartilage. So there you are. And then we put them into the saucepan. Put in the trotters. Half a teaspoonful of salt. There you are, half a teaspoonful of salt. And quite a bit of pepper. One of the things about the jellies that you get in commercial pies is they're bland. And one of the things they need is more pepper. And actually also a secret ingredient. I also add mace, and here's some blade mace. Get a little bit of that out. Probably about that much. And put that in for the jelly stock as well. Cover it with cold water. And put it on to boil. Bring it up to the boil and then simmer for 3 hours. And we'll come back to that later. For the filling you need good meat. So shoulder of pork, you need about 700 grams. This is for 2 pork pies. Some back fat, which I'll show you later, 150 grams of that, and 100 grams of streaky bacon. Now this is half the quantity I've got here, so I've done half already. In addition to that you need salt, which is a teaspoonful of salt, half a teaspoonful of ground pepper, and half a teaspoonful of mace. Again, more mace than normally recommended, that's my taste. You can adjust it as you like. I also like to add a dash of oyster sauce towards the end, and I'll show you that later. So what I tend to do is to do it in advance and put it into this plastic container and keep it in the fridge to keep it cool. And that again will become obvious later when we're putting it into the pies. You chop up the meat into quite sizable chunks, and this is one of the things which the commercial pork pies cannot afford to do because of the cost of time and labour. And it's always ground meat, and it doesn't have the same flavour or consistency. Chop it into chunks, good sized chunks, about a centimetre, just under a centimetre. The other advantage of having chunks of meat is that you can imagine it keeping separate so that the jelly goes between the pieces and goes throughout the pie. Again, keeps it nice and moist and gives it a lovely flavour at the end. If ground meat, it's a different consistency, a different idea altogether. So I spread it around, chop the bacon. I've done it into fine shreds, chop it and distribute it around. The reason for the bacon is twofold. One is, of course, it's good flavour. This is streaky green bacon, not smoked. It's good flavour, slightly salty. And the other is that it makes the meat stay pink. Otherwise, when you cook it, it goes rather brown and uninteresting. And then the back fat. Now, back fat is different consistency to other fats. It actually keeps its shape even through the cooking, so you'll still get the chunks at the end after it's finished cooking. So dot the pat around. As much or as little as you want. There's about 150 grams, 100 to 150 grams per 2 pies. Sprinkle on the about that much for each layer. That's 4 lots of that. The spices and salt and pepper. A bit more. And this is just once I put in the oyster sauce. Just a little bit. Again, remember this is quite salty as well. So it's part of your salt ration. And so you go on, another layer, and then I keep it in the fridge for later on. Now for the hot water pastry, the crust, you'll need strong flour. That's bread making flour. It's 455 grams, a pound of strong flour. A teaspoon of salt, sprinkle it in. .25 grams or an ounce of butter. And in due course you'll need the egg wash. You need 6 ounces or 175 grams of lard. 5 tablespoons of milk mixed with 5 tablespoons of water, and you chop up the lard, melt it in the water and milk mixture, and we'll come back to that later. First of all, I'll just work in the butter into the flour and do that for a couple of minutes while the lard is melting. So when the lard is melted and come nicely to the boil, just tip it into the flour. Stir it round for a couple of minutes. At this stage you may need to add more water if it doesn't turn out to be quite soft enough. And then when it's cool enough, work it with your hand, get into a nice solid gooey lump. Then I divide it into 2, keep one half and keep it warm. I usually cover it with a plate and put it on some slightly warm surface. Here's the pork pie tin, which has been well oiled, olive oil, kept warm. This is the pastry for that pie. But again, you want to take a quarter of that away to make the lid. So take about 90 grams. Again, put it away somewhere warm. And here, I tend to make a sort of little crater to try and get an even distribution of the pastry here. This is where I chickened out on making really hand-raised pork pies. I do it by hand, but I do it within a tin and then take it out of the tin to give it that rustic shape. Good. Get the meat out of the fridge, and the meat being cold will fix the pastry so it doesn't collapse when you take it out of the tin. Push it in, not too tightly. Again, I think it's best to leave it slightly loose so that the jelly can get through. It will of course shrink during cooking. There we are. Put that aside. Put that back in the fridge. And now work on the lid. And for this I put a bit of cling film down. That lid out. Bash it down. Put another bit of cling film on top. Roll it out between. You want it about 2 millimeters thick, I think. There you go. Take off the top cling film. Lift up from underneath. Wait a minute, no. Egg glaze. Crucial bit to help it to stick. it up underneath, gently place it over, ink film off, seal the edges together, cut off the surplus pastry, keep that for the decoration, keeping it warm. And now for the inversion trick to get it out of its pot. You need 2 oiled tins. That's the one it's going to be cooked in. Olive oil. With olive oil in this one. Better to do it this way, I think. Just gently. Now be careful here, just push gently there so it doesn't pull the pastry away. Ease it off. Lift this base off. There we have it. Invert that over there, and then holding them both together, tip it upside down, and there you have it. Check for gaps in the join, pinch them together, and then make a hole in the top, both to let the steam out during cooking, and also for the jelly to go in later. Fairly generous hole, and put it in the fridge. And then whatever you fancy for on the top, I tend to do leaves. Which look like tadpoles initially. Here I'll glaze again. And then that's surplus requirements. Marking the ribs, the veins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Glaze those as well. Glaze the whole lot. So here's the stock still simmering on the top there. Trotter's looking nicely cooked. Give that another hour, I think. And the 2 pies, already glazed, ready to go in the oven for 20 minutes at 220 degrees centigrade, gas mark 7. Just to brown them up, and then turn it down to 170 for an hour to an hour and a quarter. And now the jelly stock has been strained, and this is what remains. You've got to simmer it to reduce it, well, boil it to reduce it down to 500 mils. It's not that this actually doesn't require much reduction, because there wasn't that much water in it. Add the juice of half a lemon, and then we'll set it going. And wait for it to reduce. It's cloudy at the moment because of all the fat in it, but once it's cooled down, I'll put it in the fridge eventually and take the fat off it when it's cold. And it's really relatively clear then. That's the one I did earlier. Right, these are 2 I did earlier, and they've had an hour and a quarter at 170 degrees. See how they are. Turn the oven off. Nice and glistening and brown. Take them over for the jellying up. So this is the jelly, and I've taken off the bulk of the fat, put it into the saucepan, and we just take it over and gently melt it. We don't want it to be too hot. And then come back and put it in. So here it is. It's not quite fully melted yet, but that's sufficient. It's not too warm, a bit warm in the saucepan. Pour it into the jug. Get the funnel. Pour it in. Get this one done. It'll absorb a bit, and so you do it again a bit later. So 3 or 4 times over the course of an hour or so as they cool. Here's a finished product. Hopefully it's cool enough now. It's jellied up. You cut it. Nice crisp crust. Not quite set yet. A bit early, but there's the jelly. Lovely jelly all the way through. Nice moist filling. Pink and delicious, I can assure you.